Sometimes a man is wrong. Oh, she took 5 steps. Oh, and she was gone. Oh, it's one of those times. Oh, it's one of those times. She said, I know you ain't got a cheating heart. Oh, your love is true. You just gotta, she never your fault. Oh, it's one of those times. Oh, it's one of those. She don't mean a thing. She just had eyes of fire in a heart so cold. One touch, lost control. Oh, it's one of those times. Sometimes a man is wrong. Oh, she took 5 steps. Oh, she was gone. Oh, it's one of those times. Oh, it's one of those times. Thank you.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, everybody, it is good to be back with you. I always enjoy being here with you, and it's been a little while, but it's always fun to be here. And this is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, here with you at No Sound Bites Allowed. And we are here on the day before the 4th of July. We're going to have a great time. We have a great show. I especially am looking forward to our guest, who will be George Phillips. He is a candidate. Excuse me. He's a candidate for the New York 22nd District, which is found in central New York. Ranges from Utica down to, in Oneida County, down to Binghamton in the southern tier in Broome County. It includes 8 counties in total, and it's going to be a great show. Just sending him a message as we speak, so bear with me. Okay. So he's going to be here about 1:30, but until then, we have a lot in the show, and we'll probably be doing some more on Thursday, tomorrow, July 4th. On July 9th, I want everyone to know that we will also be speaking with another one of the candidates for the New York 22nd District. That will be Steve Cornwell. He's currently the DA of Broome County, and that will be an exclusive interview with him on July 9th. That should be at 1 p.m. sharp that we'll be speaking with him. We're also working on speaking, hopefully, at 2 p.m. on July 9th with Assemblywoman Donna Lupardo. So a couple of things to look forward to. We've got a lot going on, though. In the recent weeks, there has been nothing but great information. Well, just a lot of information going on. And perhaps one of the most ahead of the 4th of July, I gotta say, shame on Nike. Shame on Colin Kapernick. I mean, let's start there. This is crazy. I mean, you see Nike, they're looking forward. They want to do something that's going to be positive for the nation. They want to talk about something that's going to be American. And they're having the Betsy Ross sneaker. And what did they decide? Colin Kaepernick says he doesn't like it, that it's racist somehow. And all of a sudden, Nike goes, well, we're not going to put this sneaker out. And they stop. This is insulting. This is horrible. This is actually dumb, okay? It's a dumb idea. And let's go over this. Our flag, the American flag, is somehow racist. I know there are some people out there, the people who are in Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, otherwise known as PLOT, people in Citizen Action, in the fringe of the left of the Democratic Party. I know there are some people in there that think that, well, America is just an evil place. I don't agree with any of those people. I think they're out of their mind. Okay, we have one of the most free, one of the most liberal, one of the most democratic nations in the world, and they're telling us that somehow we're bad. We've helped free more nations and helped more countries around the world in our history than most nations combined over the history of the world. We've had more people living with a better quality of life in America because of democracy and capitalism than we've seen anywhere else. And we're listening to these groups. We're talking about political leaders of tomorrow. We're talking about Citizen Action. We're talking about the fringe left, the democratic socialists, that they are somehow thinking that, well, we'll just go to socialism. That has never worked throughout it's not a new idea. We've seen this idea for centuries, and throughout the entire 20th century, we saw this idea implemented in multiple countries, like North Korea, like China, like the Soviet Union. And in each and every single case, Venezuela, Cuba, tell me, what country has even close to the same kind of quality of life as you have here in America? What country has the same kind of freedom that you have here in America? In Venezuela, they took away people's rights to be able to defend themselves, so the government today is going out and killing people just at will, because they don't have a right to defend themselves, because the people were denied their inalienable rights. And people want to say, well, capitalism is a bad idea, that democracy is a bad idea. No matter what you think, the government is not running around. You may not like America like Colin Kaepernick doesn't, but you're not running around and having people just try and kill you. Hold on one second. We have George on the phone. Hang on. Yes, George. Yeah, come on in. Yeah. Yeah. No. Okay. Yep, George is coming in right now. Actually, we started up. So he was just asking about coming in. I have a little puppy, and he wanted to make sure he was safe. But this is insane that we're seeing this. I mean, here's the story, and this is coming from the Business Insider. The article was on. Come on in, George. The article we saw just recently. This has been happening since the Monday. So conservatives are boycotting Nike after controversial U.S. flag sneakers, and some want a not woke alternative. And this is the whole thing. We see this with movies, we see this with TV shows. Every single time we see that there is, every time they go for this social justice mentality, they always come off with going broke. We saw it with Captain Marvel. We've seen it with TV shows, movies. Batwoman is another great example recently where they're going after the social justice agenda, and every time they do this, it fails. And we're listening to Colin Kaepernick. I mean, I agree with the governor of Arizona, which we can see in this article, which comes from the Oregon Live, where they're noting that the governor of Arizona, Governor Doug Ducey, is looking to try and see if he can pull, and I just want you to see the full article here. It's Arizona governor decries incentives for Nike factory amid flag controversy. And I mean, look at the sneakers. It's the American flag. It's the original American flag. 13 stars representing each of the colonies, the red of blood and white. I mean, this is our country. And he's upset about this, as should anyone be, and he wants to take away the deal for California. Now, you're going to say to yourself, well, Mike, why is all this happening? And very simply, the answer is because Colin Kaepernick believes that America is racist. That's it. And I'm not making this up. That isn't a joke or something. That's exactly what he's thinking here. That is exactly what he is saying. That America is racist, and therefore we should be punished, or just America's at fault. And I just don't understand this. For a man who makes more money than some countries have a GDP because of America, the only country in the world where he could have the ability to play a game. He's playing a game, football. Matter of fact, he's retired. And as a retired, unemployed football player, he is making millions of dollars that he could not make in any other country in the world. And he says that this country is bad. You know what? Give up your millions, go down to Venezuela, and try and make money there. I dare you, Mr. Kaepernick. Shame on you. I mean, Game of Thrones, shame on you. You're out of your mind. And he thinks that the flag is racist because it was in 1776. Actually, the flag was used in 1792. And so somehow it's racist because there were slaves then. There's been slaves throughout the history. There are slaves in Africa right now. If you go to Western Africa, there are Muslim fanatics. Boko Haram is going out there and they are rounding up Africans and they are selling them as slaves today. I didn't hear him say anything about that. Where is Plot? Where is Citizen Action talking about that? This is insane. And it's very, very upsetting. But what I'm going to do, our guest has come in. George is here. He's waiting patiently. I want to set up our camera, get everything ready, and then we're going to come back. I also want to talk a little bit about what's going on with City Council. We have Dan Livingston, who's made a major issue. We have a council member who has been found to be actively promoting misinformation to the public, actively lying to the public. This is this goes beyond just an ethical breach at this point, and we want to talk a little bit about that. But before I get there, I'm going to take a quick break. I'll help George get set up, and we're going to be talking about all of that and way more in just a moment. Hello, everybody. Sorry about that for a moment. I'm talking with our guest in the studio, and that's always a great conversation. We actually started off well ahead of all you guys, and I want to be very happy to introduce our guest with us today, and that is George Phillips. He is a good friend. I've talked to him, and I've known him for, George, what? It was 2009, 2010? Yeah, about 10 years now that we've known each other, and we've been speaking about politics, about life, everything for, that whole time. And George has been a candidate for the New York 22nd before. This is actually your fourth run. Very involved in local politics here in Broome County as well as in the surrounding region. You've worked with several groups and organizations over the years, Jack Kemp being one of them, and more recently with the,
Reclaim New York.
Reclaim New York, that's right. And I want to make sure that everyone knows a little bit about you. So rather than me continue to tell you your story, let me let you speak a little bit about you.
Sure. If I could follow up on your last segue, I'm
Sure.
a history teacher, as many of your listeners might know by trade. As we see all of this talk about socialism and the failed socialism models, can we take a phrase from Ronald Reagan and say, let's put socialism on the ash heap of history. He said that about communism, but why not also include socialism in that? Look at what socialism has done, as you referenced, for Venezuela. Look at what it's done around the world. I happen to be a Roman Catholic. The Pope is from Argentina.
Yes, he is.
Over a century ago, Argentina was one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Would you believe that? With immigrants coming in and entrepreneurs, one of the 10 wealthiest countries. It's been a basket case because of socialism. And you may put, even though we wouldn't like to say it, New York State in that model here, where we've just had huge government. We're spending twice as much as the state of Florida, and yet the results are just disastrous. We've gone from 41 congressional districts in 1970 to 27. A book laid out called The Wealth of States said, what is the private sector job growth in the country? From 1991 to 2014, the average national private sector job growth was 24%. New York State with Wall Street was only 10% during that time, way below the curve. California, high tax state, with Silicon Valley, was 20% during that time. States with no income tax, states that are pro-business like Florida and Texas, 67% growth rate. Florida, high 40s. So we continue to see this, but I just want to say right here and now, and let's repeat it again and make it our mantra. Let's paraphrase from Ronald Reagan. Let's put socialism on the ash heap of history. Nothing helps people in need, people who are struggling, more than the free market. The free market is the greatest wealth creator in history. And here we are in Binghamton. It's amazing to think about what's happened with some great entrepreneurs not too far from here. If you drive up the road on your way to Ithaca and Cornell, you go through a little town, Richford, and you may know that John Rockefeller was born there. He went to Owego High School, but then he moved to Ohio, and look at what he did for this economy. A massive, massive expansion in the U.S. economy because of this man's entrepreneurial leadership. You go down 17, not too far from here, on his family farm. There's still a one-room schoolhouse there. We had Thomas Watson born, and he helped bring this country and the world into the computer age. So for all of the demonizing of wealth that the left does here, you mentioned Colin Kapernick,
yeah.
It's just amazing. Wouldn't you like the next Steve Jobs or Bill Gates to be born right here in this area and to expand the economy and create wealth? There's no limit, as my mentor Jack Kemp said, to what free men, free women, and free markets can accomplish. And our greatest asset as Americans is our human capital. Now, we've seen human capital in other parts of the world where there's not the natural resources we have. Look at Asia.
Yeah.
When we win the Cold War, we look at Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore. All of those countries did extremely well under the free market. None of them really had a lot of natural resources. You look at this country, sure, we're blessed with natural resources, but there's a lot of socialist countries that have squandered that, like Venezuela, like these statist countries like Iran. I mean, look at Iran for this big debate between the United States and Iran. Iran's economy is the size of the state of Missouri. Absolutely outrageous. So I know we're talking about ideas. You want to hear about the campaign, right?
Well, I want to hear about everything,
Right.
and I know we've had these conversations for days,
Right.
and I know there's just a wealth of knowledge that you have there. So I want to give people a really well-rounded idea of all of that knowledge, and a couple of tough questions. We've had tough questions over the years. I've covered George in 2008, 2010, 2016. You've never shied away from a tough question for me, ever.
No, sir.
And I respect that, and I love it.
Yeah.
So we're going to cover a bunch of things. So let me start off, first of all. As I mentioned, you've been through this race before. You know it's a tough race. For people who are not familiar, the New York 22nd District is about 2.5 hours from bottom to top, about an hour and a half east to west. So it's a big district. And it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort to do that. And it's a pain in the butt. I mean, I was in 2013, 2014, I myself even tried my hand at it, spent a year on that. So I know personally, it can be just the energy it takes for that is just immense. Why do it a fourth time?
Sure. So my life experiences have brought me to this point. What I've done most recently is very interesting. We referenced it already, but Reclaim New York. Taxes are high. People are leaving, and corruption's a problem. What a great organization, what a great mission. I've been the regional director. We fought for reform locally in an area where we have the highest property taxes for value of homes in the entire country. Could you believe that? The Binghamton area has the highest property tax for value of homes in the whole country. And we fought for reform in Albany. As this thing settled from the last election, I talked to Reclaim New York leadership and I said, look, I've worked very hard on this level here. We have to keep fighting for reform in Albany. But I think I can actually do more for the people of this area, more for our state, more for our country by serving nationally. And this is why. Albany, we have to keep fighting, certainly, but Albany is so dysfunctional. Nationally, there's a lot of things we could do that could help this area. I mentioned the property tax issue. Let's eliminate the Medicaid mandate on your property taxes. We're the only state in the country where the state government passes a federal welfare mandate, Medicaid, onto your county taxes. So if you look at your county tax bill, over 50% of it is Medicaid. That should be illegal. The people of this area should not be paying for a federal program on their property taxes. What else are we hearing? We're hearing about healthcare here, rising costs for years under Obamacare. When the government pays for something, does something for free, it's going to get really expensive, isn't it? And we see rates going up. I've talked to small business owners, how much their rates have skyrocketed through this years. With Reclaim New York, a nonprofit small business, they said, we're sorry, you're the only one under the family plan. The family plan is $30,000 a year. Now, they were going to pay for some of it, but I didn't have enough to pay for insurance with that. So I actually am proud to say I don't have health insurance. I'm in a new health sharing partnership. It's called MediShare. I share bills with other people in the partnership. We need more choices. We need a dynamic market of choice. When you walk out of your place here, you go to downtown Binghamton, we can go to the restaurants, we could see prices, we have a lot of choices. Not in the American healthcare industry now. The more the government controls, the less choices we have, the less efficiency. The two markets the government's most involved with are education and healthcare. What are we getting in public education here in New York State?
Big problems with
Astronomical spending, $21,000 a student, and yet we still have the 15th ranked schools in the country. So spending the most in the country by far, spending double the national average, is not paying off. Those are the type of things we like to do. Welfare to work for those who grew up in this area in upstate New York. This was an IBM town. We've heard that so many times. What's happening now? Sure, there's government safety nets for those in need, but when does the government safety net become a crutch? And when do we have people moving in this area just for their benefits to go further? There is dignity in work. We want every single American working. If you have a disability, we want a recovery plan so you could start working again. And it's very sad here. We need a very strong welfare to work model. We have other issues we need to tackle, but welfare to work, property tax reform, healthcare reform, those would all help small businesses and individuals in this district. And that's what I want to go to Washington to do. A bold plan for America that will lift up upstate New York.
Now, a lot of what you're saying is somewhat diametrically opposed to some of the members of Congress. We're talking about people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Representative Omar, and Representative Tlaib. Even Nancy Pelosi on some of that is definitely opposed. And one of the things that we see right now with Representative Anthony Brindisi, and I've been addressing this since January, he's ineffective. We've seen that he's gotten 2-3 members. He's put out 7 bills, 1 amendment. The amendment was 7 words. It was given to him as a gift. He's had no support on any of the bills that he's put out there. And there's no indication he's going to have any support on any bill, which means he can't do anything for us.
Correct.
He's not doing anything for the nation besides being a yes man to the Democratic Party. And it absolutely doesn't help raise more funds for this region. Given that, how can you see yourself crossing that line, the Democratic line, to the Democrats and saying, hey, here are some of my ideas. How are you going to bring them in and say, okay, support this?
So I worked on 4 bills that were signed into law as a congressional aide. One of them was on human trafficking, fighting to rescue women from forced prostitution rings. We worked with Democrats on those bills. I plan on doing it again, but you need to lead on bold ideas. And I think this representative who's in our district now, and so many others are not. They're there, they're part of the team. He may say that he's independent, but We know his Albany record was extremely liberal, and
His
now,
Congress one is too.
unfortunately, all of these bills are now becoming law that he supported. Nationally, it becomes so much of a chess game. This seat is critical for the Democrats. They want to keep it. So they use members like this as fundraising tools and pour money in, and then try to isolate them from pushing a liberal agenda, which is most of their team's agenda. We need to lay out bold ideas. Another idea that I have on national debt, $22 trillion national debt, is to have what I call Grace Commission 2.0. Ronald Reagan had a Grace Commission, and Reagan said, look, let's have business leaders come in, scour for waste, make recommendations. They found that 1/3 of federal spending was unnecessary and could be eliminated. They found that 1/3 of taxes were going uncollected. So that's just amazing. The Grace Commission 2.0 is going to challenge every single member of Congress, all 435, including Ocasio-Cortez, to say, what are 10 areas that we could save money for the taxpayers in? And I want to know. And maybe hers are in the Department of Defense. And you know what? I believe in peace through strength. I want a vigorous national defense. But if there's a way to have an even better product out of the Department of Defense, even more vigorous defense, but perhaps get more efficiencies in contracting and in other areas, that'd be great. The president is having a robust F-35 model, a plane's putting out, but he's doing it more cost effectively. They looked and said, how can we get this important product out, but do it more cost effectively? So the Democrats, if they want to come up with their ideas, they should be challenged to do that, because we are stewards of the taxpayer money. I'm so tired of Washington politicians and New York politicians and local politicians saying, we've got this money for you for this project. That's your money, Michael. That's my money. It went to Albany and Washington, got recycled, and less of it's coming back.
Well, that's been true for a long, long time.
Yes.
But in fairness, I understand the question of, okay, we're going to challenge them to do better ideas, to try and find new ways. But the Democratic Socialists, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for the party is running to the left.
Right.
I mean, look at the recent debates that just happened. Joe Biden running to the left and failing. We see Senator Kamala Harris and Senator Elizabeth Warren rising to the top based on gender and identity politics. We're seeing that race is becoming an issue, like Colin Kapernick, and again at the debates. So we're seeing a separation in the party, even within the Democratic Party, to the furthest fringe. And it's to say that we're going to challenge them to become better.
So you're sorry, Michael. It's a radical agenda. It's sad at this point that what we really need is a Republican majority in the House, but then we have a lot of Republicans who've let us down. Mr. Berdizzi talks about bipartisanship. We've had a whole lot of bipartisan failures in Albany and Washington. You don't arrive at $150 billion in spending in Albany without both parties taking fault. You don't arrive at a $22 trillion national debt without both parties being at fault. And what I would like to say is, as a teacher at Broome Community College, I come in, I don't tell the students anything about my politics. I say, that's not important. I want you to understand the issues, to understand the views, and I lay out what the right is saying, I lay out what the left is saying, I engage them. I can't tell you how many students through the years have said, Mr. Phillips, you're the only teacher who's ever given us the conservative position. And Ronald Reagan said, if you lay out both positions to the American public, they're going to gravitate to our position. Now, you would say, I think, as a journalist, as a media personality here, this is hard. Still, the majority of the media is to the left. The majority of academia overwhelmingly is to the left. So you're here in your corner of the world, and this is an important corner here with a lot of great people listening, but you are engaging and you're laying out ideas again and again and again. How can we possibly be having this debate on socialism versus the free market when you see what's going on in Venezuela? So we have to keep doing that. Majorities do matter, but the Republican majority, even when we had it under Trump's first 2 years, was spending too much money, did not come up with a health care plan that benefited everyone. When you start off with Obamacare tax credits, remember those were just for select people.
Yeah.
Everyone else is still, I'm paying so much for my private insurance. My employer might be putting in $10,000 or more, but then I have to pay this. We need to have things that are fair across the board for everyone, and the Republican leadership was not able to lay out a plan that was a dynamic market of choice. There was more choices for all Americans. That's going to solve health care. So one, you never want to give up hope on socialists. I mean, what's the story about the 50th anniversary of Woodstock? We have some success stories there who were into socialism in the 60s and they realized it failed and they've come around. You know, I know listeners will always say, and we hear this every election, oh no, the Republicans are doing so poorly with younger voters. We've got some younger voters who are engaged and conservative and realize the free market, but as you get older, you start paying taxes, you see this shift always happening where you go from liberal to more conservative. I've seen it with college friends, certainly I'm sure we all have. So we have to keep going. We have to keep making a case to young people. I think I'm positioned to do that. As a teacher, we have to lay out bolder ideas. And I think we just haven't enough as a party laying out bold ideas for the American people.
Okay. For folks who are listening, and if you want to call in or if you're trying to contact us, please send a text first. The number you can reach us at is 607-242-9247. Again, that's 607-242-9247. We're open to hearing from you. We want to. But if I'm getting a call from an unknown source, I'm not picking up because I don't want to have some spam call coming in the middle of our conversation. And always you can please leave a message or text in on YouTube, and we are also monitoring Facebook. So please do let us know your thoughts as we go. So George, let's focus on a couple of key issues because you're talking about bold ideas, and I know a lot of people will say, okay, so let's get specific on what is the bold ideas you're thinking of. And I'm going to start off with, let's talk about the Second Amendment. Yes. And gun control. I know that was a big issue in 2016, and you had many meetings about that. It's an even bigger issue, I believe, today. And I'm a big Second Amendment advocate, and I'm against the red flag laws. There is currently legislation that's being considered by Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and in the House on the red flag laws, making them national. Where do you stand on those bills?
So I am an American history teacher who teaches the Constitution. I'm a strong defender of the Second Amendment, right to bear arms. And I believe that almost every piece of legislation nationally and certainly here in New York State is infringing on this right. It's making it more difficult for law-abiding citizens to express their constitutional rights. When you start taking away some rights, you can certainly take away others. And that's what's very scary. And that's what's scary about socialism. A huge part of socialism, I'll get back to the Second Amendment in a second, is obviously the Green New Deal. And think about it, the more the government control healthcare, the more they can control energy, the more they control us. And that's what's so frightening about socialism. So this country became great through freedom, and I would certainly oppose the laws that you had mentioned that are being proposed here nationally. I think we need more education, more law-abiding citizens exercising their Second Amendment rights, and we have to just overall never, never, never discount the power of evil in this world. When we see these horrible, horrific shootings or killings, because they're not always just shootings, a lot of the people planning them have other means to do the killing. Obviously, Columbine going back years was bombs.
Yeah.
We need to never discount the power of evil and remember that guns are not killing people, it's people with guns who are crazy, mentally ill, or have been overcome by evil who are doing this. So those are some of my thoughts on the Second Amendment, but absolutely critical, and I think it speaks so much to freedom and who we are as a people.
Well, I think it's a very critical issue on the Second Amendment, and I know there were some questions in 2016 on your positions in there. Has there been a significant change in your position from 2016 to today in reference to the Second Amendment and what you're looking to do?
Sure. So I've always taken NRA ratings. I know they're the gold standard for Second Amendment issues. I've always received an A on their scorecard. I believe I've always agreed with all of their position, all the questions that have been given to me. So I don't foresee any Second Amendment issues coming up where I would be opposed to the right to bear arms and to the Second Amendment at this point. Again, so many of these things are the federal government having a heavy hand, and I certainly support specifically the right to bear arms, but I support the whole Constitution. And perhaps in our closing, we could talk about the Constitution a little bit as we're on the eve of the 4th of July here, which is the Declaration of Independence, but still it's a time to celebrate the Constitution as well, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do want to touch on one or two social issues here. I know you've mentioned you're against, or it appears from your statements that you're against the single-payer healthcare or Medicaid for all. We were talking about Second Amendment. In terms of another big issue, marijuana, legalization of marijuana, and abortion. Con, sorry, that's my puppy. Legalization of marijuana and abortion are two big issues that are they're going to be part of 2020
Sure.
and the presidential side, so they're also part of this race. Tell me, where do you stand on those two issues?
Yeah, first, marijuana, obviously very hot in the news here, and I know listeners will have their own stories and perceptions on this, but my family really has been ravaged by addiction, especially in the area of alcohol. And I know some would make the argument, well, marijuana is less lethal in many ways than alcohol, but what I see is marijuana as a starter drug. I had a friend the other day who said his business partner said his son had 12 friends in high school that got into marijuana, 10 of them are dead now. So if you look at people who are using the hardcore drugs, the opioids, the heroin, the fentanyl, they usually started with marijuana. That's my huge concern about this, that it is a starter drug. I do believe we should keep it illegal. I do believe, though, that perhaps we're not prosecuting it on the level we would be prosecuting other lethal drugs. So that's perhaps a compromise there, but I do feel that morality follows law. As someone who teaches young people, I'm very concerned about whether it's alcohol, which of course is legal when you're over 21, or drugs such as marijuana, the effect they have on your brain. I think if you took the ideal young person from the ideal family, they're still going through a lot as a teenager. It's puberty. It's coming into your own as a young man and young woman. I think we're all smirking as we think back to our experiences.
We've all had that experience.
And I think there's a lot of evidence that says if you start abusing alcohol, if you start abusing marijuana, at this point, that it's going to cause damage or perhaps more addiction. A lot in my family who have become addicted, especially to alcohol, they started drinking a lot when they were very young. I also have a huge concern to link this to the welfare issue. And I have a friend who works at Raymond, and he said, look, I've worked hard there for 15 years. I called in sick 5 times. We have people who call in sick 5 times in their first month. They can't pass drug tests. So I do think that a rise in marijuana will hurt our overall economy, production, and other matters. Just pivoting into drugs, the focus really needs to be on the hardcore drugs, certainly. Now we're seeing the methamphetamines, the fentanyl, obviously still heroin out there. But I believe we need something bold on the federal level to counter Mexico. We did this in Colombia with cocaine, with Plan Colombia. We smashed the drug trade down there. There's actually a friend of mine who lives in the village of Lyle. He's the mayor up there. Jerry Mackey, his brother John Mackey, was instrumental architect in Plan Colombia. We need the same thing for Mexico, and we can do it down there. There's gangs, there's drugs, it's dangerous. With Colombia, we gave a lot of resources to the government. They were able to strengthen their police. They were able to beat the narco traffickers, the FARC, the terrorist group. We need to do the same with Mexico. This is one of the great challenges of our time. 40 to 50,000 Americans dying of overdoses here, and we see just a real tragedy. So those are some of my thoughts on the drug issue. In terms of abortion, I've always been pro-life. It's obviously a heart-wrenching issue. I know we have libertarians listening in here, but we have pro-life libertarians like Dr. Ron Paul. And I think when you look at freedom and what we care about so deeply, it begins with the right to life. What's so appalling and horrifying here in New York State is the new abortion law, which is now allowing not just abortion up to birth, but infanticide. And we know that Anthony Brindisi was a co-sponsor of that law. So whether you're libertarian or pro-life or pro-choice, I can't tell you how many people have talked to me about this new law, how appalling it is. When we get to Washington, the main issue we have to vote on is taxpayer funding for abortion. I believe there should be a firewall between the taxpayers and abortion. And I think many libertarians who might be pro-choice would agree the same. They may say, look, this is an individual choice, but I don't want the U.S. government paying for other people's abortions. So we need to focus on that. The Hyde Amendment, which very sadly, I was surprised for being a liberal Democrat as he was, that Joe Biden had supported the Hyde Amendment his whole career. And now, as you mentioned, with the onslaught of the left,
He switched
He all of a
his
sudden
decision.
said, I don't support the Hyde Amendment. I mean, if you are really pro-choice, don't you want people to make that choice? Don't you not want taxpayer money brought into a choice that people may morally oppose?
See, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to mention that the Hyde Amendment does kind of separate, or many people would argue that it separates federal funding from Planned Parenthood, and that they claim that there is a difference there, and there's a question of the accounting or not, but technically that exists at this moment. So are you looking at a bill that would enhance that, just redoing Hyde, or are you saying...
So Planned Parenthood should fall under the Hyde Amendment. They are the number one abortion provider in the country.
Right.
The money that they're getting from U.S. taxpayers, they're claiming is not going to abortion, but it's as if I was giving you a huge amount of money in your left pocket, and then that freed up your right pocket. Let's say your right pocket was just your fixed expenses.
Right.
Your left pocket was expanding this radio show, broadcast, advertising.
Right.
You know, if I'm giving you money in your right pocket for your fixed expenses, you could all of a sudden start using that money in your left pocket here. So Planned Parenthood, I think, does a lot of fuzzy math. I believe they are using U.S. taxpayer money to promote abortion because it's opening up their resources here. And the president has said, look, we are all for mammograms and screenings and other things we're doing to really help women, but Planned Parenthood is so extremely focused on abortion here. If they stop doing abortion, we're happy to fund these other things. And in lieu of that, I think we should be having, even though I'm limited on the federal government level here, I mean, we do want mammograms. We do want these things for women in need, certainly.
Okay. We're running out of time, but I do want to spend more time. I want to get some more answers for people so they have a good understanding of who you are and what's going on and what this race is going to be, because it's going to be a complicated race. At this moment, there are two other candidates who are Republicans who are looking to run against Mr. Brindisi. That is Franklin Sager and, as of yesterday, District Attorney Steve Cornwell. And I will be speaking with District Attorney Cornwell in the future because we want to give everyone fair time and make sure that we do cover everyone on this. But there's also rumors of possibly former Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, who you ran against before and who held the office. She may be getting into the race. There's rumors that there may be Binghamton Mayor Rich David. I believe you may know him as well. He's in the party. He may be running. I'm aware of potentially two other individuals who may be getting into the race. So that's a lot of people. And looking at that, how does that, if more people get into the race, does that change your outlook? Does that help you, hurt you, or does it matter at all to you?
So right now we have to focus on what we're doing, connecting with voters, raising money, getting our message out there. The primary field's not going to be set till April, so there could be people who are in and out. There could be new people jumping in as late as February or March. So it's going to be quite a time here. I would say we feel very good. I feel like our network's grown tremendously with Reclaim New York in terms of more activists in our network, although Reclaim New York is nonpartisan, non-political, but this is what I did. And certainly developing a more expanded donor base from that. It's going to be a long race. We look forward to having the debate. We've always done quite well here in Binghamton against Maurice Hinchey when we didn't have Northern Broome, the Republican strongholds. We still beat him by a wide margin, 57-43, without the Independence Party line. We did very well against Steve Wells and Claudia Tenney here, winning by 32 points, even though Steve Wells outspent us badly. So we have a great base here in Binghamton. Our people are going to stay with us no matter who is in this race here. So many of our Binghamton people, but our challenge is getting up north. And I've been to Pulaski, Rome, Little Falls, Herkimer, Utica, Chittenango, so many places up north. And we actually believe, I take a lot of inspiration for Lincoln. People say, why are you running again? Lincoln ran, or you've lost and come short. We really have had two runs here. We had a run in the Hinchey district. We have a run in this new district here. The Hinchey district had 43,000 more Democrats. This one is a Republican district that Republicans should win back. But Lincoln lost 7 elections before he was elected president. He lost so many different times, kept coming back. Lincoln in 1860 was also everyone's second choice for the nomination. In those eras, the big names came in. William Stewart from New York, Chase from Ohio. there was always a deadlock at the convention, and Lincoln said, I hope I could be the majority's second choice, and he was. In that Tenney Wells Phillips race, all the polling and all the word on the street was I was the everyone's second choice. Tenney did pretty well with a lot of the audience that's listening to here. She had challenged Richard Hanna. She was conservative, Tea Party. I'm an American history teacher who teaches the Constitution. I just naturally connect very well with that base here. And some said, no, we're going for Tenney. She's done this before, and stuck with her. The Wells supporters, I think we had a lot of goodwill there. We were able to make the case there, but he's got more money. We think he's got a better shot. They went with him. So a lot of goodwill out there for us. We're off to a great start. We feel like we've got a great chance in this election, and we look forward to the debate, and I look forward to seeing these candidates. I really consider them friends and people I've got to know through the years, and wish them well, certainly, in this great journey and escapade.
It's going to be it's an escapade.
You're smiling because you've been on the trail before as a journalist and in other ways too.
It's an escapade, all right.
Yeah.
So I would ask, how in 2016 you raised over $100,000.
$250,000.
At the end of it, by the end you had $250,000. Came in with at the very beginning with about $100,000 within the first month, and obviously looking at what happened in 2018. This was one of the top 5 races in the nation. It is, by my projection, going to again be one of the top 3 races in 2020 for Congress. Last time we saw in excess of $19 million spent in this race, Republican and Democrat, well over $9 million, not including outside group funding, $9 million from the Democrats. How is your funding going so far, and do you believe you can raise numbers equivalent to that to be able to fight equally?
Sure. Funding so far is going great. For those who know me locally, I've always raised a lot of money for an area that's the median family income is $43,000, and it's the maximum amount you could give on PhillipsForNewYork.com is $2,800, but those smaller donations, $25, $50, they're extremely valuable. The point being is, when we report on July 15th, we're going to be well over $100,000. I believe at this point in the cycle, as a challenger last time, Brindisi was maybe at 150, and he was a sitting assemblyman. So
roughly,
we're off to a good start. In terms of the money game in this, there's 2 points. There's through the primary, and then there's the home stretch. And I want to say, I may be a little off in these figures, but Brindisi, with national liberal money being shotgunned in, which still is, in terms of primary date, even though there was no primary, 2018, maybe 2 million. Tenney, over $1 million at that point.
1.5,
somewhere
in that range, yes.
So you look at that, let's call the two of them together 3 to 4 million out of, I've seen data that shows 25 million was spent on this race from outside groups and the parties. So just think about that, Tenney and Brindisi, about 4 million, and then those last several months, another 21 million coming in. I think you'll see that there. So we have to fundraise enough for the primary, and then also messaging. What is the message that carries us to this district against Brindisi? Let's talk about Brindisi here, because it'd be great to win the primary, but if you win the primary and don't win the general election, then it's I hate to say all for naught. But how do we defeat Brindisi in a national election here in this district? He is an Albany assemblyman. He is an attorney. I feel that his platform or his background is not necessarily going to connect with the Rust Belt voters in this district. Trump won this district by 16 points, and if you said, how am I going to connect with them? I'm going to say, look, I am someone who is a teacher and a champion for tax reform, whether it be through my work with the Jack Kemp Foundation or Reclaim New York, but I have those working class roots. My grandpa was born on his family farm. My grandpa was a union leader who fought to get weekends off with the railroads. I worked in manufacturing at the IBM plant. I served the National Veterans Chairman. Workers, manufacturing, some listening to this show, if you were in manufacturing at IBM, thank you. You helped lead this country into the computer age here. And I was there my summers in college, and we all played a role. Many of you played a much bigger role than I did, but working class roots, that's who the president is able to connect with so extremely well, because we know so many of these working class voters feel that they've been left behind, that Albany and Washington are elitist and they've forgotten about them. So that's our plan, but we have to say, okay, Brindisi is most likely going to have more money than whoever the Republican nominee is. And we're seeing this with Act Blue. So whenever he's out there saying, I'm so moderate, Look at where the funding's come. It's coming from national liberal money. They're not supporting him because they want a moderate in Congress. They're supporting him because he is part of the majority there. And this may be staged. I didn't vote for Pelosi, but you know what? He's there in enabling conditions for Pelosi and Ocasio-Cortez to do what they're doing, and he's fueled by national left money, for sure.
Well, George, we've covered a large swath of information.
Yes.
A lot of range of things, and I hope this helped a lot of people to start to know more about you, to start looking into this race and getting more interested and finding out more.
Yes.
If they want to look up more information, events that you're going to be at and such, the website is
phillipsfornewyork.com.
Okay, Phillips and that's NY or
spelled out New York. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sometimes people
Sure.
get it right. So phillipsfornewyork.com, and they can definitely find out more on some of the events that you're going to be coming to. But let me finish the conversation here. We've got a couple of minutes, about 4 minutes, and then I'll take a break and I'll come back and I'll finish with our thoughts with Dan Livingston. But tomorrow's the 4th of July.
Yes.
Constitution, America. I think it's a great holiday for us to be Americans. And I would love to hear some of your thoughts. You were mentioning Constitution. You're a constitutional teacher. What are your thoughts about the 4th?
This is our day, and freedom is God's gift to America, but it's also the gift to the world. So we have to keep emulating that. We have to keep fighting for freedom. What's made this country great is not the government and not what the government's done. It's a limited government that has protect the rights of men. If you look at the Bill of Rights, which actually obviously came as part of the Constitution later, all of the rights that are listed are not rights that the government gives us. It's rights that the government shall not take away, because the founders realized this great miracle of freedom and what freedom could do. I've mentioned already, but there's no limit to what free men, free women, and free markets can accomplish. Our greatest resource as Americans is our human capital, our ingenuity, our entrepreneurship. We have to keep unleashing that, but we need active, engaged citizens to tell the story and say that socialism is not working, big government's not working. We know it was actually on September 17th, a few years later, when the Constitution was ratified, that it wasn't actually ratified, but it was proposed. Ben Franklin comes out to the streets of Philadelphia. Mr. Franklin, what have you given us? A woman said. And Mr. Franklin said, we have a republic if you could keep it. This is a representative government. Our representatives are performing poorly to get to a $22 trillion national debt. This country remains great, I think, beside ourselves, besides all the things that Albany's doing and Washington's doing. We are doing so much better. We have to keep it going. Look at what this president has accomplished in a short time with tax relief and regulatory relief. There's so much more we can do. I'll be fighting for a bold plan for America to uplift the people of upstate New York.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about this, and this will not be the last time that we have you on to speak. We got, 15 months to go. So I'm sure we're going to be speaking together, and I know I'm going to be covering several events with you. I do want to thank you for coming in today and getting a chance to introduce yourself to reintroduce yourself to many of my audience. And, folks, it's going to be interesting. And I hope most of all you're going to have a great 4th of July for you and the family.
Thank you. Likewise.
And folks, just hold on. We'll be taking a quick break, and then we'll be back. And I'll be finishing up the show talking about just the insanity of what's going on at local government levels, not just here in the southern tier, but we see it throughout the entire nation. And we'll be talking about that very soon.
Great show. Very impressive. Thanks for your time.
That is not superstition lead the way. No, it ain't good.
All right, folks. Always good to be back with you here at No Soundbites Allowed. And I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. Happy to be here with you. We've just had our guest on, Mr. George Phillips, who is a candidate for the New York 22nd District. I think it went very well. It was very informative. We kept him on a little bit longer than we had initially thought. We were going to go 30 minutes. We went 45. But I think it's important to give the candidates the opportunity to speak. And unlike most of the rest of the major media, we're actually here to let you find out what's going on, to take the extra time to make sure that the candidates are able to get their ideas out and let you know what's going on so you're well informed at every step. And we'll be offering, and as I mentioned in the conversation with Mr. Phillips, we'll be extending the same offer to District Attorney Steve Cornwell, who we'll be speaking with on June 9th. And we'll be having a conversation with him in studio, also about the New York 22nd District. And so I'm looking forward to that. I should also mention, since I'm bringing that up, if you are in the Binghamton area, in the Southern Tier, New York, please drop by the Belmar Pub or the Park Diner, or actually both. They're great establishments, good food, good drinks, great service. I enjoy them. I go there often. That is not a promotion. It's not paid for. This is me speaking because I enjoy those establishments and I just like them, so I want you to know. And if you go, please let them know that Mike sent you. So with that said, there is one final thing I wanted to talk about today before we go any further, and that's about Dan Livingston. Now, we've talked a little bit about the national impact, looking at Colin Kapernick. We were talking a little bit about the Betsy Ross shoes that Nike got rid of because they apparently don't believe that the American flag is patriotic enough and somehow it's racist, which makes no sense whatsoever. Just because there was slavery in 1792 doesn't mean that the flag was racist or that America was racist. That doesn't compare. I mean, that doesn't mean that America is racist today because there is slavery in Africa at this moment. It doesn't make African nations necessarily racist, does it? I don't think so. But that's, a very unique viewpoint that the far left, that political progressive leaders of tomorrow, that Citizen Action, the Indivisible New York, that's the fringe left, are looking for a way to get the emotions going. And one of their representatives is a Councilman Dan Livingston. We've spoken about him before. We've been following him for quite some time. Matter of fact, it was back in January 10th of 2019, the beginning of this year, when we released the article, Councilman Livingston's Day 1 Ethics Violations. Mr. Livingston is a local city councilman for the city of Binghamton, and he's been involved in nothing but scandals, ethical violations over and over and over again since the very moment he got sworn in. Besides the fact that Mr. Livingston does not actually swear in, he doesn't pledge the allegiance, he doesn't speak the words of the Pledge of Allegiance. All he does is that he just stands there. Now, that's a personal preference. Some people do that, some people don't. That's fine. But when you take that in combination with the fact that he's also been committing ethical violations over and over and over again, that's a problem. That's a big problem. And when I say he's committing ethical violations, we've seen him violate people's privacy with videos. He has no controls over him. He believes he can act in any manner, violating laws. He recently violated the Homeland Security regulations on public safety by having video disseminated to the public of critical services, water and sewage information, live streamed, that he put out on Facebook that endangers the very people, not just the city of Binghamton, but everyone going down into Pennsylvania. Throughout several hundreds of thousands of people who are affected potentially by someone, terrorist or someone with nefarious intentions, could be affected by his actions. So Mr. Livingston has a sordid history, to say the least. And as I said, we started our coverage on him, following him from actually before January, when he had violated ethics and usurped the power of city council before he even got sworn in. But then we saw him continue. And we brought this up at the city council, and we've also brought it up in person. But no, the thing that's most recent is that Mr. Livingston has been complicit in spreading misinformation amongst the public. He's been going out there and spreading information he's spreading third-hand information. Individuals are talking to him about a sewage plant. Now, if you're not familiar with the Southern Tier region in Binghamton, there's a sewage plant that's being redesigned, possibly privatized, and Mr. Livingston has been promoting the opinion of the union predominantly, and that of the Citizen Action and Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow. He's been putting out their talking points as if they are actual truths. His excuse is, well, he's just reposting information, and that he's had conversations with staff at the facility, and this means that it's all credible, except he has actually never spoken to anyone actually responsible for any of the stewardship and control at the sewage plant. And therefore, he is putting out other people's opinion about what's going on as if it is actual fact, which has caused great confusion for city council, for the city of Binghamton, for that construction program and any future efforts in the city. And that has delayed action that could cost the city money because of his delays. And this is not conjecture. This is not me just saying, well, this is what I think. This actually came out on July 1st, city council meeting, from actually a video done by Dan Livingston himself, where he had the entire city council collected, and we saw that the actual members of the city council, the individuals involved in the sewage plant, actually rebuked him for putting out misinformation, for lying to the public, for promoting untruth and causing problems for everyone. And at this moment, in our video, which is titled July 1st, 2019, City Council Work Session, and I'll show you that in just 1 second so you can see it. Now, you can go on YouTube, you can see this. I've teed up the moment at 25 minutes into the meeting where the mayor of Binghamton, Mr. Rich David, is rebuking Mr. Livingston, and I'll let you hear what he has to say.
This is a major project that's going on here. It is, a $250 million project. Not to mention that we haven't heard a peep of most of any of these things until after the concept of discussing a public-private partnership emerged. So, from my standpoint moving forward, there is a significant amount of misinformation that's coming out there. It's originating, I would say most of it, we're not going to speak in absolutes, a lot of it is being channeled through Councilman Livingston. And moving forward, I just think we need to have a plan on how we're going to respond to this. Either you're going to become more responsible with your statements, or we are going to just have to spend time doing this every couple weeks. And so how are you going to handle the misinformation you've put out there already? Are you going to put this response on all of your social media pages?
I don't think it's fair to characterize it as misinformation. This information is coming from the operators of our plant, the paid professionals who have been operating this facility for, some of them for decades. And so to say that I haven't been talking to anybody is also a mischaracterization. I've been speaking with our staff, and I believe that
who are not involved in the construction project of the plant. I mean, do you think that that's the best way to proceed? And that you're entitled to your own opinion, but I mean, what is your response to their response? I mean, they are professional engineers that the city of Binghamton has hired to manage this project, and they're basically saying everything you're saying is not true, and they're providing photos and documentation. You know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. You know, it's clear that the photos you posted or shared and commented on are grossly inaccurate and don't paint the entire story.
All right, folks. So I just want to be clear. This is what we're getting. So when Dan Livingston was elected, he said he wanted to be transparent, that he wanted to speak for the people. And then he went out and he usurped the power of city of Binghamton and the power of the city council of Binghamton by putting out Facebook pages and social media pages as if he had authorization so that he could make statements that were not authorized. So basically, it's an act of fraud, and it is an ethical violation. He did that in November. Then we see in January, he decided on his own to tape secret recordings, videos of members of city council without notifying them that he was recording them. And yes, you can record meetings, but you need to let people know they're being recorded, and that there should be some oversight by any governmental group or anyone to be able to say, okay, you have legally followed the law, you've followed the letter of the law on what can be put public and not including information that isn't legal, which therefore could put the city of Binghamton under lawsuit for that, as well as being personally liable to Dan Livingston. And now that brings us, then he goes out and violates Homeland Security regulations and endangers the public. And now here he is, we're seeing, and the two people speaking in that were Dan Livingston and Mayor David. Mayor David starting it, and he's sitting at the table in the suit. But what we see very clearly is Mr. Livingston has no concern about the fact that he has put out misinformation. He's been factually documented, proven wrong. That the information he is telling the public, the information he is trying to influence the public with, is factually wrong. It's not even a question. It is factually wrong. It is in this interview we find out that he has never spoken to anyone with actual first-hand knowledge or is in charge of the sewage plant that he is speaking about and that he is putting out misinformation about. I don't understand this. How long do the people have to suffer with an individual who abuses the law, who violates the law, who endangers the public, and now is continuing to misinform the public willfully and has no intention of ever telling it? You want to talk about transparency? Mr. Livingston, in being directly asked by the mayor of Binghamton, Richard David, being asked, how are you going to inform the public about the misinformation you have provided, about posts that you have had to remove because you have legally you've created violations of law and had to be removed, and Mr. Transparency, Dan Livingston, doesn't tell the public a word. He just removes posts, he just changes his answers, but he doesn't tell the public why. He doesn't inform them that he was factually wrong. He doesn't tell people that he's spreading misinformation, that this is third-hand information from individuals who don't know what they're talking about, and that he is not bothered to do his due diligence to find out from the people actually involved, the engineers, the planning board, members of the city council and the board, that he has not bothered to ask any of them a single question. You don't have to believe me. It's on video. It's the video done by Mr. Livingston himself. It's his video, unedited, that says it all right there. You can start at minute 25 and go to minute 26. I believe that's the most important parts, but you can watch the whole thing. And it's very clear. This is not how you serve the public. I don't care if you're with progressive leaders of tomorrow. I don't care if Citizen Action supports you. I don't care that you're part of a fringe movement of the Democratic Party and that you don't respect the American flag enough to actually salute, that you don't respect the people enough or the nation enough to actually give the Pledge of Allegiance. Fine. But you cannot go out there and actively misinform the public without any consequence. We have a pattern of ethical violations. We have a pattern of violations of law that can endanger the public. And now we have a willful attempt to misinform the public. How can this person still be in office? This is beyond negligence. This is not because he is stupid. It's not because he doesn't know what he's doing, that he's a new member of the city council. This is an active and purposive attempt to mislead the public, to violate ethics, to, in many cases, violate the law. I believe he should be removed. And we see this in county after county, city after city throughout America as we see Democratic Socialists rising up. We're seeing the fringe of the parties moving into power, where individuals are misusing social media. They are misrepresenting their positions. They have no idea what the laws are, and they are actively endangering people's lives because they just do something because they want to, regardless of the consequences that others have to suffer for it. That is not what America is about. You know what, Mr. Livingston, I say to you, on the 4th of July, tomorrow, why don't you take a moment, open up a history book, and look at the great things that people have done in this nation and the fact that they follow the law and they live in the social contract that we all have together to benefit each other rather than to benefit a single individual or a political ideology that not everyone agrees with. Perhaps by following the rules, we can do more to benefit the public than to go out there on your own, doing your own thing for your own personal gain. That's my personal view. Mr. Livingston, you may not be able to support, you may not love America. You don't pledge allegiance. You won't even say the words, put your hand over your heart. That's your personal perspective. And that means that I hope on the 4th of July, you're not watching the fireworks. I hope you're sitting down in your room and you're studying the actual Constitution to understand what's going on. But since you may not be doing that, I also want you to know that no one is forgetting the fact that you have a pattern of violations and that these things have consequences. And New York State, federal government should all be involved in this because you have broken the law, you have violated ethics, and there is a consequence that will come down the line. That's my thought. You may think I'm wrong, folks. Let me know, please. I look forward to hearing your comments. I thank you for joining us here at No Sound Bites Allowed in our extended conversation today. I hope you enjoyed our conversation with candidate George Phillips, who's running for the New York 22nd District. I hope you come back on July 9th when we'll be speaking with Steve Cornwell at 1 p.m. for his conversation about the New York 22nd race and his position in the DA as the District Attorney of Broome County. And I also hope you look forward to us speaking with Donald Lepardo, Assemblywoman for New York 123rd District. I hope you have a great 4th of July, and I'll talk to you again all very, very soon. Thank you.